Welcome to About Face Theatre presents 5 Questions With, and today's guest, Curt Columbus. Curt is the artistic director of Trinity Rep in Providence, Rhode Island, a post he has held since 2006. He's also artistic director of the MFA programs in acting and directing at Brown University. Before that, for nearly 20 years, he was an actor, writer, and director in the Chicago theatre scene. His directorial credits at Trinity Rep range from classics like the Scottish play and The Merchant of Venice to musicals such as Ragtime, Cabaret, but also to new work, including world premieres like Social Creatures. As a playwright, Trinity Rep has been the home to the world premieres of 3 of Curt's plays, Paris by Night, The Dreams of Antigone, and Sparrow Grass, as well as his versions of Chekhov's plays, which have all been published by Dramatists Play Service. His adaptation of Crime and Punishment with Marilyn Campbell has won awards and accolades around the world. Curt, you're very welcome.
Thank you so much. It's really nice to be here with both of you. Thanks for the invitation.
Oh, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. So, Curt, straight off the bat, what player experience first got you into theater?
So it's an interesting question, Anna. When I grew up in a very small town in rural Pennsylvania. My father was a janitor. My mother was a secretary. Nobody artistic necessarily in our family. And when we were 12 years old, my dad, who was a big proponent of travel as a way for young people to sort of learn about the world, he took us to New York City. And he went to buy tickets at what at the time was like a TKTS sort of booth. And he didn't know anything about theater, so he picked Dracula. So I'm 12, I put on a little jacket, and we go to see Dracula. And it's this production, sort of famous production that Frank Langella starred in as Dracula. Edward Gorey designed the sets.
Oh, wow.
And we walk in, I mean, I fell in love with the experience, right, of going to the theater. I'd never seen anything like it. There were ushers in little jackets with gold braids taking our tickets, and they showed us to our seats. And there was an act curtain by Edward Gorey that was all black and white with one tiny little red rose in it. Oh. And then the whole production happened, the act curtain goes up, and everyone is in black, white, and gray. And the first color that's introduced is when Dracula arrives and he has a red rose in his. Ooh. Oh, it was stunning. And at the end of the first act, he rips his shirt off and starts to like bite the neck of Mina, or who I can't even remember which character it is. And 12-year-old me may have had like my first sexual experience. Like Langella's chest. And so it was a formative experience on a bunch of levels, but it was literally the introduction to the notion of the experience of going to live theater. And I think that's what changed me. And then, I never looked back.
Fantastic.
Very cool.
Okay, Curt, so you've worked on all kinds of plays. Like I was talking about musicals, classics, new plays, all sorts of things. So, but putting you on the spot, what's one great play that you love and why?
Paul, it's really, it's so hard to answer that question, right? We just started rehearsal for August Wilson's Gem of the Ocean, which is literally one of the greatest plays ever written. And it's just such a joy to be in a room with those words. And it made me think, I think about Chekhov's Cherry Orchard, which is a great play in its expansiveness. But then thinking about this question, I'm led to the notion, like, what's my favorite thing that I ever staged? And a couple of years ago, we did this production of Ragtime, which based on the novel set in 1906. But the themes of that novel and of that particular piece are Black Lives Matter, Me Too feminism, immigration. And so we did this production that started out in present day dress, with everyone kind of in a rehearsal room, and the great Eugene Lee did a set that was basically just it was a large wooden staircase, 2 large tables, and 12 chairs for a cast of 14. So there was not room for everyone at the table, metaphorically. And it started out in present day. And then when we got to the end of the first act, we started introducing costumes. The second act was in full period costume. And then the end of the play was all about stripping away that costume to get to the fact that we're back in current times. And I just have rarely worked on a piece of theater that had so much opportunity to explore. The music is all exquisite and perfect for what you're trying to do theatrically. So yeah, that may be my favorite experience working on a play.
Yeah,
That's great.
Very cool.
Lovely.
Yeah, I love that musical. Okay, so then, can you tell us about a time in your theater life with, all these different experiences where something turned out differently than you expected it to? Never, right? Never.
Let's see, should I talk about the time I killed a small theater in Chicago? No. No, wow. So when I was a young theater artist, I was part of a performance collective in Chicago, this really great kind of visionary group of at the time, very young people. It was called Live Bait Theatricals. And we built our own theater. We built the cafe that was next door. My then girlfriend was in the company, and her sister and her sister's husband were also in the company. You can probably see where this is headed. We ran the cafe, we worked in the theater. And then when she broke up with me, I was suddenly cut off from my whole, what I thought was my theatrical life. And these are really good people that I'm not casting aspersions on anyone, but there was the need for me to leave. And I thought, if I left that, I'd never have a theater again. And a friend of mine let me stay at her house. We also lived above the cafe and the theater. I lost everything, right?
Yeah.
Girlfriend, collective, theater, job. I worked in the cafe, where I lived. And my friend let me sleep on the bed in her guest room, which the dog slept on during the day. And, and I'd come home and I was working on a play, and the dog would be there like, and I want you to get to bed. I'd be like, please just let me lay down. I'm so tired and I don't have anything left, And a year later, my life was completely different, right? And I tell this story to young people all the time, because you think that your theatrical life is something very specific, but and you think that you have a career, but you don't have a career, you have a life. And so a year later, I was an associate at another established theater in Chicago. I was traveling to Russia as a translator. I was doing all of this work that I hadn't been able to do in this other, you know what I mean? And so, so anyway, it was, I thought my theatrical life was over, and only to find out that it was just beginning at 26. So I hope that's an okay answer.
Oh my God, fantastic.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, I love it.
Fantastic. Okay, Curt, so you have had all these great experiences in the theater. I'm not even going to say how many years you've worked in the theater, because you've done so much already. But so what is it that keeps you coming back to the theater? What moves you? What excites you about theater?
Oh my gosh, it's been so... Well, two things. One, I love being in rehearsal, and I didn't realize how much I had missed it during the pandemic, but we've been rehearsing this production of Tiny Beautiful Things. And, at the end of the first week, my stage manager came over to me and started asking questions, and I just started crying, and I didn't realize that I was that emotional, right? But she's like, are you okay? And I said, I'm fine. I'm just so happy to be back in a room with actors and working on a play. So I think, Paul, that's one of the things that is so important to me. But then it's sitting in a room with other people And it's not like watching a movie where the movie will play if there's you and one other person, or just you, or no one. Whereas the theatrical experience is all about that exchange between the stage and the audience, right? And I think about things like when we saw The Inheritance in London, that huge two-parter, and at the end of the first act, all of these young people come in, the ghosts of the kids who have died, and that the audience is just bawling. And part of your emotional experience is the collective emotional experience. So I think that those are the two things. I love being in rehearsal, but I also love being in an audience and having that experience as well.
Very good. Yeah. So can you think of any tools? Because obviously you also work with people who are training to be actors and directors and things like that. But are there any tools from theater that you have found useful in the rest of your life?
Well, I mean, that's such an interesting question. I think if there's one thing that theater cultivates in not only its practitioners, but in its audience, truly great practitioners, that would be empathy, right? And if there's a lack of anything certainly in American society, but I think around the world, we're experiencing the death of civility. And I don't mean that in a kind of, you should hold your teacup this way. And I mean, in terms of respecting other people's opinions and understanding that everyone's lived experience has value, right? And so if there's one thing that theater teaches you, and I watch this with the kids who take our classes, we have this education program for school-age kids as well at Trinity Rep. And I watch, they learn to love each other and bond with each other in ways that they don't in other activities. Sometimes in sports, I think they do, depending on the level of toxic masculinity. But I watch these kids, they take such good care of each other and they're so excited to do it. So I think that's probably the greatest gift of the theater that we use in our lives.
Beautiful.
Well, Curt, this has been just plain inspiring. Can you, just as a bonus question, can you tell us anything about what you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, that's very kind of you to ask. We just opened, we had our press opening last night of a piece called Tiny Beautiful Things. It's an adaptation of a book by the same name by the author Cheryl Strayed.
Oh, yeah.
She's a remarkable American author. It was adapted by Nia Vardalos and Marshall Heyman and Thomas Kail and performed at the Public in 2016. And we've been looking at this piece since then because it is all about, Cheryl Strayed writes about radical empathy, right? Which is to see others and view them with compassion instead of condescension. And so it's also about surviving the unsurvivable. And we've all been in the unsurvivable for 2 years. So it's been extraordinary to have audiences come and see this. And as one of our colleagues said, this is the play that I didn't know I needed. So it's been kind of extraordinary. It's just monologues, it's interlocking monologues, and it's a very odd piece. I don't even know that I'd call it a play. It's a piece of theater. Back to my performance art roots, maybe. So that's what I'm working on.
Fantastic. Really beautiful. Well, Curt, thank you so very much for being with us, for taking the time out. We really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, it's totally my pleasure, Anna. And I'm hoping that I'll get to meet you both in person the next time I come to Dublin.
That would be great. You're very welcome. And a huge thank you to you, the audience, as well, for joining us. If you enjoyed the interview, please like below, follow AboutFACE, and share, because we believe theater makes life better. See you next time on About Face Theatre presents 5 Questions With.
If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and share. Thanks for watching.